PowerPoint mode for on your end? Okay, good, good. Everybody can hear me. Thank you so much. Welcome everyone. Thank you for having me this afternoon and inviting me to come out. And I've had a chance to, actually I'm looking at some of you, the participants online, and I recognize some of your names. So I've obviously had a chance to meet with some of you. My name is Anna Mallett. I work with the Texas Comptroller's Office in Austin, and I am an outreach specialist for the ABLE program. And so I've participated in several of your conferences every year. Honestly, I do a lot of events throughout the year, and this is most likely my favorite. I get to meet, and I meet all of you, and every year just getting to see you and your kiddos and coming by and meeting with you at our exhibit table. So I hate that I wasn't be able to see you in person this year, but we're able to just kind of share some information about ABLE with you today. I'm gonna just, my agenda for the session really is just to kind of give you a little bit of a brief history of ABLE, very high level, talk to you just a little about what ABLE is, kind of the basics of how it works, talk a little bit about Texas ABLE, the program that we have here within the state, and then we'll just leave you with some resources and do some Q&A at the end. Before I get started though, I will tell you, if you have questions as I go along, and most likely you will, just feel free to go ahead and put them in the chat box, and Cinda's gonna go ahead and compile them all, and we'll circle back to everything at the end and answer anything that I may have missed kind of along the way. So let's go ahead and get started. So whether I'm on the phone talking to a parent or whether I'm talking to a group of folks, I always have to let you know that, well, number one, we have a lot of attorneys in our office. And so they make me put this in all my PowerPoint presentations. But basically this says that I am not a attorney. I am not a tax advisor. And so some of the things that I'll talk about in a little while involve investments. And so there's strict laws against that. So I just have to let you know straight up front that I am not able to give financial advice. We do have a program disclosure statement that is a fun read. It goes through all of the information on the program, rules and regs. So definitely you'll want to refer to that as well. And so I'll give this PowerPoint to Cinda. So you guys, feel free to, if you want a copy of it, I'm certainly willing to share, not a problem. So talking a little bit about ABLE, where it came from, really what it means. ABLE, if you're not familiar, stands for Achieving a Better Life Experience. So ABLE was founded after a piece of legislation back in 2014 called the ABLE Act. And it came about really by a gentleman by the name of Stephen Beck. He was a parent of a child with a disability, but he was also a disability advocate. And so what he did was he lobbied to create the ABLE programs. What ABLE is essentially a savings tool for families that have individuals with disabilities. So it's a new way for families to save long-term, using the funds in the accounts for disability related expenses and keeping eligibility for public benefits, right? In a nutshell, that's what ABLE is. It's a savings account. So Stephen Beck, the story is, being a parent of a child with a disability, the story is he was sitting around a kitchen table one night with some other parents that had children with disabilities, and they were talking about long-term saving strategies, right, for their kids. How are we going to save long-term and still keep that eligibility for these important benefits, right? Getting on those waiver services, Medicaid, SSI, if they were to need that in the future. So they really lobbied. It took 10 years to pass the piece of legislation, but it truly was a game changer for the way individuals with disabilities can save. So prior to ABLE, if a individual with a disability could not have more than $2,000 in assets or resources in their name, or they would be disqualified for SSI or Medicaid. So essentially, those families had to remain poor, right? So by the creation of the ABLE program, these families can now save much, much more than the $2,000 in an ABLE account and still keep that eligibility for benefits. I will tell you, it's very important to know before I move on, you do not have to, or the child does not have to be currently receiving benefits to benefit from an ABLE program. So here's an example. I have my child is 3 years old. She does not qualify for SSI because of my income, right? It's going off of looking at my income because I make too much money. However, when she turns 18, if she goes to apply for benefits on her own, they will look at the amount of money that she has in her account. So she cannot have more than $2,000 in a checking or a savings account. However, she can have up to $100,000 in her ABLE account and still keep that eligibility. So it's a way for, even though you're not receiving benefits now, you can start early, save, and then save over time and still keep that eligibility. So that's kind of how it works. In a nutshell, it's a new savings tool for families. One of the other things that the piece of legislation did on the federal level was it added a section 529A to the tax code. Some of you may be familiar with the 529 college savings account, so for higher education. So that's saving tax-free for higher education expenses, college, room, board, books. The change in the tax code added a 529A, which stands for ABLE. So these are sister accounts to the college savings accounts. They work very similar. They are, instead of saving for higher education, you're going to be saving for disability-related expenses in tax-free. And so the last thing that the piece of legislation did was it authorized the states to begin opening the program. So that's important. The only way someone can open an ABLE account is through a state. There are roughly 40 plus states that have ABLE programs today. Texas launched their program in May of 2018. So that's important. There's no physical bank you can actually go to open an account. It can only be done online through a state. So the Texas program, actually, before I tell you a little bit about Texas, what I'm going to do here, we work, as I work with the Comptroller's Office, we work with an organization called the National Association of State Treasurers. And so they have an ABLE committee, and they've put together a video, and we got involved with them, and just kind of to help give a little overview of ABLE and to drive awareness about the program. So it's about a minute long, so I'm going to go ahead and play it for you now, and then we'll come back and talk about ABLE. The Texas ABLE program.
As someone who has a son with Down syndrome, this law was one of the best things that's happened to the disability community in a very long time.
In 2014, Congress passed the ABLE Act to help families with disabilities save for life.
The ABLE Act is a game changer for Americans living with disabilities, but there's a problem.
Only 50,000 Americans are currently using ABLE accounts to save.
And more than 14 million are eligible.
An ABLE account is a savings plan that people with disabilities or their families can use to save for someone with a disability the same way that people can save for someone without a disability.
Ethan has needed extensive dental work, which has cost thousands and thousands of dollars. You can go down the list, and pretty much every part of his life took on an added expense.
ABLE allows people with disabilities to put money away that they can use in the future to cover essential life costs,
without the risk of losing government disability benefits.
We save for Audrey through an ABLE account the same way that we save for my other daughter with a 529 college plan.
Before ABLE, people with disabilities who depended upon government benefits to cover the high cost of living with a disability couldn't have savings of more than $2,000 without risk of losing their benefits.
Nobody can live off $2,000.
This limitation made it extremely difficult for many people with disabilities to live independently. Do you want to be in a place where you can live all by yourself and do all the things that you want to do in your dreams? Yes.
With ABLE, you can save without losing SSI, Medicaid, HUD, and other important benefits.
ABLE allows you to set aside up to $15,000 each year.
If there's one thing you need to know about the ABLE account, it's that your money grows tax-free.
But the difference is that you can use it at any time to pay for any eligible disability-related expense.
My favorite thing about ABLE is that it is flexible and simple. I just go and sign up on the website and it's done and I'm saving.
Stable,
Dependable.
Capable.
Enable.
Available.
We need your help to spread the word on ABLE.
I'm excited to announce a new savings program for Texans with Disabilities administered through my office. It's called the Texas Achieving a Better Life Experience, or ABLE program. With the Texas ABLE program, eligible Texans with disabilities and their families can save money for short and long-term disability-related expenses in a tax-advantaged account. For too long, many Texans with disabilities have been unable to work towards financial independence. Texans with disabilities now have a path towards a better future. Find out more today at texasable.org.
All right. That was a really good little video from NAST. They did a good job putting that one together. But it kind of gives you an overview of just basically what I just said, talking about the impact that ABLE's had. And so talking about the Texas ABLE program, I mentioned earlier, we opened in 2018. So we are an online enrollment. It's administered through the comptroller's office. We also administer the Texas College Savings Plan. So you'll see some of these logos up here you may recognize. That's important just to know that, you know, we also, in addition to doing a number of other things for the state, the comptroller's office and our division specifically, we manage the ABLE program and the college savings plans as well. So let's talk a little bit about ABLE, the basics. I looked in the chat, I snuck up few notes and looked into the chat and saw you guys had a couple questions about the disability certifications. So I'll cover that here in just a second. An ABLE account, we're talking about it. It's a taxed advantage account. These are savings accounts, but they're also investment accounts. And I'll talk just a minute about how to set those up and exactly what that means. These are owned by the individual with a disability. That's important. Whether that individual is 3 years old or whether they are 40 years old, they always own the ABLE account. Others can set it up for them and there's different ways to establish it. We'll talk about that, but they're always the owner no matter what. These are your own private funds. So these are intended to supplement other funds that you may be receiving through SSI or Medicaid, any private funds that you have saved. And they can be used in conjunction with a special needs trust. This is super important because ABLE is a tool, a great tool for a lot of people. A special needs trust is also a great savings tool. And again, I'm not a financial advisor, so I'm not giving financial advice. However, I'm telling you that there are many times that they can be used in conjunction together, and we'll talk about that in just a moment as well. So eligibility requirements, these are all based on that federal law that was passed back in 2014. They all remain the same, and they're pretty much as follows. The disability for the individual has to have occurred before the age of 26. That's before their 26th birthday. That's very, very important. In addition to that, they have to have one of the following. So if you see the 3 boxes below, in addition to the age requirement, if they are eligible or they're currently receiving SSI or SSDI, they would qualify. If not, they can have a condition on the Social Security Administration's list of compassionate allowances. That is a list that the Social Security Administration maintains. They're constantly updating. It has a different conditions and illnesses that would qualify someone to open that ABLE account. And the last way, that last box, and I believe this is what the question in the chat box was referring to, is about the disability certification. So this last way is you would need to get a doctor's note, a doctor's letter stating that the disability did occur before the age of 26 and that individual does have a medically determinable physical or mental impairment. I will tell you by law, the definition of a disability, determinable physical or mental impairment is it results in, it's going to last longer than 12 months or result in death. And so that's the definition that they use for that. So you would need to grab that certification, that letter from the doctor, and be able to have that. When you go through that enrollment process, you don't have to enter in that information. You would just need to keep that and have it on file. So that's important to know. Again, in Texas, the individual with the disability has to be a Texas resident. That's super important. I missed that part. So a Texas resident, the age requirement, and then meeting one of the three boxes below. So who's going to benefit from ABLE? You saw a little bit about this in the video. Obviously, this is an empowerment tool for individuals with disabilities who may be older, who may be in transition time, getting ready to learn how to manage their money. They've never been able to save before. And so this is a way for those individuals to save and learn to manage their own finances. Peace of mind. This is Stephen Beck, right? This is long-term saving strategies for their child when they're no longer around. Who can open that account? So really in Texas, and really based on that federal law, there's two ways to open an ABLE account. If you are the eligible individual with the disability, so you meet those eligibility requirements, you are a Texas resident, and you're at least 18 years of age, you can open and manage your own ABLE account. It's all done online. Certainly that is an option. If the individual is not able to open it for themselves or not able to manage it, they can have a authorized legal representative open it for them. So that's going to be a parent, a guardian, or some other form of fiduciary. So that's going to be a power of attorney. We do have a limited power of attorney form on our website that is to be used only for ABLE purposes. So if that's something that you wanted to look at in addition from being a parent or the guardian, you could certainly pull that form up and use it for ABLE. It's a legal document, so that's out there as a resource for you. How much can you contribute? So based on that federal law, the requirement is you can contribute up to $15,000 a year in one taxable year in an ABLE account. So that's from all contributions combined. So that could be money from the individual with a disability. Maybe they're working. That could be grandma, grandpa. That could be a gift for Christmas. Everything combined cannot exceed the $15,000. That can also be a contribution from a special needs trust. That's very important as well. Cannot exceed the $15,000 a year. If the individual is working and they have an ABLE account, they passed a law recently called the Able to Work Act that says the individual can save up to an additional $12,140 on top of the $15,000 per taxable year. So essentially $27,000 they can save in their ABLE account if they're working and still keep that eligibility for benefits. So that was super, super beneficial. The maximum that you can have in an ABLE account here in Texas is $500,000. So that's the most amount of contributions that can go in the account, and that's the 529 limit for the state. So this is a super important slide for those folks who are receiving SSI, right? So if you're receiving SSI, or if the child is going to be receiving SSI in the future, essentially what this slide says is that that individual can save up to, or that account can have up to $100,000 in that ABLE account before there would be any suspension of that SSI monthly benefits. So what that means is if that individual is receiving monthly SSI benefits, when that account reaches $100,000, any monthly benefits that they're receiving, they're temporarily suspended until that account falls back down under the $100,000. Very, very important. This is also important. Medicaid benefits always remain. Even when that account goes over $100,000 and those monthly benefits are temporarily suspended, Medicaid always remains. Now, these are, this is counted for earned income for that individual with a disability. So just because the individual is working and putting the money in the ABLE account, it doesn't circumvent the amount of money that they can make and still qualify for benefits. I know that's a whole other process, but it does count as earned income for that individual. So we talked about it's a tax advantage account. Your money goes in, $15,000 a year. So what can you pay for out of an ABLE account? The law says you can pay for what's called a qualified disability expense. So that at the end of the day is anything related to the individual's health, independence, or quality of life. This includes basic living expenses, housing, food, medical bills. The IRS determines what is a qualified disability expense, and the definition is they wrote the definition to be so broad as the health, independence, or quality of life for that individual that at the end of the day it can be almost anything, as long as you can justify it and tie it back to that individual who is eligible for the ABLE account and that it was related to their disability. Here's just examples: education, housing, transportation. This could be a bus fare. This could be this could be modifications to a vehicle. This could be medical therapies. This could be attorney fees for setting up a trust. And at the end of the day, really tying it to their disability. Funeral and burial expenses are also considered a disability expense. I usually get at this point where people will ask me, well, what would not be a disability expense? Can you give me an example of what wouldn't be a disability expense? And so the example I give is, you know, it's health, and the law says that disability expense is health, independence, or quality of life. Well, quality of life could be a trip, right? A vacation for that individual with a disability. So you've decided to take, I've decided to take my child to Disney, right? So I use the money out of my ABLE account to fund the expenses for my child that has the disability. I could not use it to pay for my other child's expenses, right? So it can only be used for the benefit of that individual with the disability. So that's an example I give. So it has to be specifically for that individual. Now, with an ABLE account, there is a Medicaid payback provision. And this is based on that federal law. I know that we here in Texas, and I know that there are other states also working to eliminate this provision from the ABLE, but as of today, it's still here. And so what it says is, in the event the individual with a disability were to pass away, any funds that were paid by Medicaid during the time that the ABLE account was open, that the state has the authority to come ask for those particular funds back, just from the time that the ABLE account was open. So we're looking at $15,000 a year is what you can put in your ABLE account. If the individual were to pass away, the state can come ask for those particular funds back since the ABLE account was open, not the lifetime of the individual, just since the ABLE account was open. And that is only after any outstanding bills have been paid from the account. So that's going to be any qualified disability expenses. So essentially pay down the account. And then also you can deduct the funeral and burial expenses as well. And at that point, the state would have the authority to come ask for those funds back. I added a slide here on special needs trust because I feel like I always get a lot of questions on this. And again, I can't give financial advice, but I do want to show you how they kind of go hand in hand. And pros and not really pros and cons, but sort of a comparison of how they work together. An ABLE account is something that you guys, whether you're an authorized legal rep or the individual with a disability, you're controlling it, right? It's an easy online enrollment, fairly simple process to do. A special needs trust is going to be more costly to set up, and it's going to have someone else that would have to administer it. An ABLE account can be used for, we talked, disability related expenses. There are some limitations on what a special needs trust can pay for, depending on the type of trust. So there are many instances where they do not pay for housing, basically any benefits that would be covered through government benefits, they're not going to pay, they would not duplicate that and pay it out of a trust, if that makes sense. I'm happy to provide clarification on that at the end. Contribution limits to $15,000 maximum a year for ABLE accounts, and actually that should say 500,000 in assets instead of 370. I apologize for that. There is no limit to how much you can put in a special needs trust. And then the tax treatment, you get the, you know, using the funds in an ABLE account. If you're taking it out and using it for disability related expenses, they're used tax-free, and you're not going to receive that same special tax treatments. But again, they can certainly be used hand in hand. They're both great savings tools. I think there was a question in the chat earlier about special needs trust, and I believe there was an older parent had a question, and she said, if I understood the question correctly, it was asking about she doesn't have any money now to set aside for the trust, but what I'm seeing, and as I talk to families, what I see that families are doing is they will often set up a special needs trust and have it funded upon their death with life insurance. And so that would be a way that families can set up that, you know, that tool, the trust for that individual. And remember, I said earlier that a special needs trust can fund an ABLE account. So you could set that trust up to actually, you know, have that $15,000 put into that ABLE account, if that's something that you wanted to do. But just a little comparison of the way they work together. Let's talk real quick about Texas ABLE. So I mentioned 2018 we opened up for enrollment. TexasABLE.org is our website. Again, you can have a copy of this presentation when we're done, but our website is a fairly simple process to go online and enroll. It takes about 20 minutes. It doesn't cost anything to enroll. There is a minimum of $50 when you get ready to make that first contribution. It is a self-certification process. So what that means is once you've gone through the enrollment process, answered a few questions, you're going to check a box at the end, and you're going to say, I am who I am. The individual with the disability is who they are. It did occur before the age of 26, and you meet all of the specifications, and you're going to check a box that all of it is true. So there's nothing to upload at that time. That's important. So if you've got that certification that I mentioned earlier from the doctor, this is where you're going to hold on to all your paperwork. Just keep it in a file, and in the event you were ever needed to furnish it, you would want to be able to have that available, but there's nothing to upload during that enrollment process. Now, during the enrollment process, this is where you're going to choose the way you want your funds saved. So this is kind of where we get a little bit talking about the financial investments that I mentioned earlier. There are 3 ways. So through the enrollment process, you'll get to a section where you can select how you want your funds saved. There are 4 options that you get to choose from. So 3 of them are called what are called managed allocation options. So those are the 3 on the left you'll see, from aggressive to conservative. They're predetermined portfolios for you. So those are your managed allocation options. And then you've got your FDIC insured bank savings option. That's going to work more like a money market account. That's going to be your 4th option. So when you go through that enrollment process, you can decide how you want your funds saved. So you say, you know what, I want to put 100% in FDIC and call it a day and just keep it through the enrollment process. Or I've decided I want to go ahead and put 50% in moderate and 50% in aggressive. So you can allocate it however you want based on your situation and the way you're going to be using your ABLE account. But those are your 4 options that you choose from. Based on that federal law, you can go back into the ABLE account and actually change those investment options up to twice a year. So you can go online, see how they're performing, and if you want to make those adjustments, you can certainly do that as well. So once the account is established, you've got the username, the password, it's time to put money in the account. Different ways to do it. You could certainly write a check, putting that directly into the ABLE account. You can do electronic fund transfers. So actually just from one banking account to another, electronically putting the money, making that contribution into the ABLE account. You can set up payroll deductions for you or for perhaps the beneficiary who maybe is working. All or a portion of that fund of the paycheck could go into the ABLE account. You can set up automatic recurring contributions. So that's, you know, every month I'd like to put in $100 into my ABLE account. So it's very flexible, just kind of depending on your situation and how you plan on using it. You can, the law was changed a couple years back, and the ABLE accounts now allow for a rollover from a college savings plan, a college 529 plan. Remember in the beginning I talked about how they were sister plans? So they changed the law that says families that have funds in a 529 college savings account, and you know, if they're not able to use it for those purposes, can now transfer it to an ABLE account, a 529A ABLE account at no penalty, and use those funds in that ABLE account for other things other than just education, anything related to the disability. So that's huge, and that's helped a lot of families being able to roll those funds over. Remember, you're still subject to the $15,000 a year on that contribution limit from the rollover from the 529. And then also another way to contribute is going to be our online e-gift. So our system has a tool built into it to where you can go on to online, whoever's managing the account, actually go in and send out an email to family or friends or really anyone, inviting them to make a contribution into the account. So this could be for holidays or birthdays or really just because, but what this does is it circumvents the, you know, grandma wants to give money to the child, but grandma can't hand money to the child because it counts as income for that child. This way, grandma can make a secure contribution through the ABLE account and it doesn't count as income to that child. So it's just another way to save, but this is a super helpful tool that our system has. So money goes in online, money's gonna come out online as well. You can certainly request a paper check. Keep in mind that these are investment accounts, so they don't work exactly the same as going to your Wells Fargo and having a debit card and just taking it out and it's instant. So if you're wanting to execute a check, if you're wanting to electronically take money out, there are waiting periods. So it's a 3 to 5 day for electronic transfers out of the account and then to have that check executed. The easiest way is going to be the electronic transfer. You would transfer it out, put it into a personal checking or a savings account, and then pay for the disability related expense through that your own account. However, and the final way it would be our system has a online vendor pay to where you can actually pay vendors directly from the ABLE account. If you have a certain medical provider or a cell phone provider that you pay every month, you can pay it directly from that account. I will tell you, I can go ahead and I feel very comfortable in announcing we are getting ready in mid-November, November 15th, we are going to be launching our prepaid debit card. So it is going to be with US Bank. It will be a prepaid debit Visa card. And so the way that will work is you'll have that debit card, which will be attached to the account. You'll go in, you'll make that withdrawal from that account, from your ABLE account, and you will put it onto your debit card. This is just gonna be another way to use it. You can put it on that debit card and then you can hold those funds on that debit card and then use that particular card for disability expenses. I will tell you with the debit card and even with the online system that we have now, it's all tracked for you. So you can see as the money goes in, you can see as the money comes out, and you can notate that as well. So, but the debit card will have a little bit more extensive tracking for you to be able to keep all that itemized, the information together. You can go generate statements and that kind of stuff. So we're super excited about that. And I'll answer any questions about that at the end as well. I'm sure you will have questions. Couple of things to keep in mind about withdrawal considerations. Remember I talked about what would be a non-qualified withdrawal. So say I ended up taking my children to Disney, and I ended up paying for my other child's expenses in addition to my child with a disability, right? So the IRS came back and they said, Anna, you know what? On August 18th, you went to Disney and you paid. This would be a non-qualified expense. So what would have to happen is, I would have to pay a 10% tax on that, a 10% penalty, excuse me, on that particular distribution that came out and that I paid for that expense for the other child, and then I have to pay taxes on that distribution as well, just on that distribution. So it would be a non-qualified. It'd be just like using a college savings account for something other than college savings. So let's see here. The maintaining records, I talked about that earlier. It's the job of the individual with the disability or the ALR to maintain those records and just keep them in a file. Housing withdrawal. We added a whole slide on this because the Social Security Administration, they make a big deal about housing withdrawals. And so what this says is, if you're going to pay for a housing expense out of an ABLE account, you have to take the withdrawal from the ABLE account and pay for the expense during the same month, okay? Otherwise, it's counted as accountable income. So that's as a accountable income for that individual. So that's very important that it's taken out and used within the same month. So we are seeing that a lot of families are using ABLE accounts to pay for housing. Number one, because you can't pay for a housing expense out of a special needs trust. There are other ways that folks are using ABLE accounts to get rid of what's called a 1/3 reduction. So as I talk to families, 1/3 reduction for your SSI determination purposes. So paying for an ABLE expense out of a housing, or paying for a housing expense out of your ABLE account can sometimes eliminate that 1/3 reduction. I'm happy to clarify that at the end if you guys have questions on that one. So in order to have an ABLE account, there are fees. As they're investment accounts, there's fees built behind them. It is a $4 a month just to have the account. So it's $48 a year. Let's see, there's various fees for if you want to generate a statement or a paper statement and that kind of stuff. So with that $4 a month fee, you get 2 ACH or 2 electronic withdrawals from that ABLE account. This is super important. So 2 electronic withdrawals from that account. Anything above that is going to be $1 a transaction, okay? So this is where that debit card is going to come into play and be very helpful for folks. You can make that transaction out of that ABLE account, and that would count as the 1 ACH withdrawal. There is that check processing fee. Again, this is a record keeper behind it. So there is a $5 fee just to have the check executed. So because there's going to be easier ways to make that withdrawal from the account. No fees for rollovers from another account. Yeah, so if you've got an account in another state that accepts, there are states that are open that do accept out-of-state residents. So if you've got one from another state and you want to roll it back to Texas, not a problem, we'll take you back. No fees for rollovers from another account or a 529, change of beneficiary, and that kind of stuff. Getting started, here's a screenshot of our website, texasable.org. This is where you're going to go. You're going to find out everything that I'm saying and then some. This is where you go to enroll, and this is where you will go back to access the account as well once you've set up that username and password. But a fairly simple process to get through. I've provided some links here for you, and these are on our website as well, but I always like to show these because at the end of my presentation, because I want to show you guys where all the rules and regs are so you can learn about everything related to ABLE. So I've talked about, as we're the comptroller's office, I've talked about Social Security, I've talked about Medicaid, I've talked about the IRS, and so we have to work with all of these entities, right? And so their employees have rules on the way they treat ABLE accounts as well. And so each of these links here is basically the guidance from each agency. The Social Security Administration, their POMS, the Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services, the IRS, they have a whole publication just on ABLE accounts, talking about qualified expenses. And then that last link there is the I provided is the Texas State Securities Board. It is a link for sort of just good investment information 101. If you want to just learn a little bit more about investing, that's a really good website as well. I'll leave you with our contact information. So we have a customer service team that's a 1-800 number Monday through Friday that you can contact and ask any question about ABLE. So anything you could call and say, I listened to this presentation and I missed this one part. Can you help me with this? All they do is talk about Texas ABLE. You can certainly call them, you can email them, and then that bottom portion there is my information. So obviously we're out right now, our whole world is upside down as we're all home. So we're doing lots of virtual events, lots of webinars, lots of one-on-one WebEx meetings with parents, families. If you have questions, or if you know of another event, or just really if you want to have a meeting and you have more questions, we're happy to sit down and go through a presentation or answer any questions that you have along the way. So that's my contact information. And then again, the customer service there at the top. Q&A, I think I talk really fast and it's a lot of information. And I see, let me see, I saw something like 22 questions or something. So I'm gonna just hand it back to Cinda, and I'll let you, and I'll do my best to answer any questions.
Sounds great. One of the things, a couple of questions, and that is you can find the PowerPoint and download it on our website at txp2p.org. It's on the right-hand side, scroll down, you'll see the presentation name, and you could go ahead and download it from there. Okay. I'm an older parent and trying to attempt financial planning for my adult daughter who is on SSI and Medicaid waiver. Should I set up an ABLE account now, even if it's not funded? She has no first-party money, but will get survivor benefits that might need attending to if we were to pass suddenly.
Well, again, financial advice. I can't tell you that you certainly open up an ABLE account. What I can tell you is it would be a great option for you in the fact that it's easy to open, and literally you're funding, even if you fund $50 in the account, you have it. What I tell families, and people will go, well, I don't know, I mean, should I, how much should I put in? And just start it, go through the process. It's going to generate an account number for you at the end of the process. You make that $50 contribution, maybe add a little bit more here and there. Again, after that $50 minimum contribution, put in at least, it's a $25 minimum each time, and start and watch it and start playing with it. If you decide you want to take a little money out. And so I can't tell you, specifically for your situation that this is something that you should do. I could tell you that it would be a tool definitely that you'd want to consider using in conjunction maybe with that special needs trust and getting funded after the fact. But definitely you want to talk with a financial advisor or special needs trust attorney for those reasons. But an ABLE account is something that you can control and fairly simple to open it up. So it would seem like an easy fit, a good fit for you.
Great. How do we know if the type of disability our children have qualify? What type of disability certification does one need? Doctor's note saying something in particular, or other type of document of disability?
A doctor's note. Literally, it would have to say, based on that slide where we talked about for the eligibility, the medical impairment has to be lasting longer than 12 months or ultimately result in death. So it would need to say something about the definition of the type of disability that individual does have. Is it going to go away within 12 months? Essentially, did it occur before the age of 26? So those types of things, it would just need to be on that letter. There's not an official certification that has to be, there's not a template or anything like that. It's just something that you would need to be able to provide if you ever needed to have to do that.
Great. So then I think you covered this, and it's in the PowerPoint, qualified disability expenses or essential life expenses. I feel like you covered that, but if there's additional questions about that, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I always get questions on that. The basic living expenses is huge. I mean, being able to pay for, just food and clothing, and those are all disability related expenses, health, independence, or quality of life.
What happens if you have an ABLE account and then move to another state? Can you keep the ABLE account in Texas?
That's a good question. As the requirement is you have to be a Texas resident in order to have an ABLE account. And I mentioned earlier they're transferable. So what you would do at that point is you could just transfer to another state that accepts out-of-state residents. We work very closely with them, so we could help you get that money transferred over. At the end of the day, all the states are really the same. It boils down to administrative fees, but they all are the same, and they're all based on that federal law. So it'd be a fairly simple process to get you rolled over to another state.
Can you use the ABLE account to pay for a car?
So as the comptroller's office, we're not in the business of saying yes or no. So when you make that withdrawal, we don't say, oh yeah, you can use it for that. You can certainly take that money out and use it to pay for a car, and you would have to, in the event that the IRS were to ever audit you, you would have to say, August 18th, I paid for this car. This car is used for my child who has a disability for XYZ. Here's the paperwork. And that's your disability. Health, independence, or quality of life. That is helping that child remain independent or further their independence in life.
Okay, here's another one on qualified housing expenses. Would it include furniture, electronics for the home? I think the same thing applies, right?
It applies. You would make that justification. Absolutely. That's needed for quality of life, right? Independence. Sure.
Okay. My adult daughter has a first party special needs payback trust for court ordered child support. Can funds from the first party trust legally be transferred to an ABLE?
Well, I was fine until she said legally. Funds from a special needs trust can certainly go into an ABLE account. You would definitely want to advise, and even whether it's a first party trust or a third party trust, but definitely consult with that attorney. But yes, certainly that could be a contribution from that trust. Yes.
Okay. My son is employed but part-time. Does that allow limit to be up to $27,000, or is increase limited to his earnings?
Your son is employed part-time. So they're asking, would he be eligible to contribute the additional $12,000 on top of the 15? Is that the question?
I think that's what the question is. Yes.
So yeah, so if he has an ABLE account and he does not contribute to a 401k or a employer-sponsored retirement plan, then he would be able to contribute the additional $12,000 to his ABLE account of his wages. The $12,000 of his wages, yes.
Nope, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Were you done with that question? I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, yeah, it's fine. Yes, I was done.
Okay. Can you roll an IRA account over into an ABLE account?
You cannot. No, not at this time. I get that question a lot. I really wish that was a mechanism or something that we could do, but the 529s you certainly can. The 401k at this point you can't. Not legal advice, but you would have to take a distribution and liquidate those funds and then put it into the ABLE account. And you don't want to do that because you're going to have to pay taxes, but that was not financial advice. So
no legal advice is given here today.
Yep.
If I get a limited power of attorney for my adult child, would he also have access to the account, or does this document exclude him from his deposits and or drawing for expenses? In other words, would we both be able to have access to the funds?
If you're opening it as an ALR for him with that power of attorney, you would be in charge of the account and maintaining the, for that, managing funds on that individual's behalf. You could certainly have that child, the child would not be able to have their own username and password to go into the account and manage it, right? You could work with them to assist them as a financial planning tool and that kind of stuff, but whoever's managing it, you wouldn't have two ways to access the account, if that answers the question.
Okay. Is Able Fund counted as assets when applying for a FAFSA?
So FAFSA is okay, let me think. That's a great question. Someone asked me that the other day, and I was supposed to find out the answer to that. And I don't want to tell you the wrong information. I do know that if you have, and I'm going back to my college saving days, because prior to Able, I worked on the 529 side. I do know that a 529 account is owned by whoever set up the account. So it could be grandma, grandpa, or mom and dad, whoever opened the 529 account. An Able account is owned by the individual with the disability. So it just depends on how they're completing the FAFSA. And I would have to have more information than that. I can follow up with that one. Cinda, if you want to get me in touch with that one, I'm happy to qualify, to give you some information on that.
Yeah. Sharon, I've written your name down. I will follow up with you. I was told my life insurance beneficiary should be my daughter's third-party special needs trust, not an Able, so the remainder can pass along to her siblings if she survives the Able. I was also told that there are strict rules for transferring from first-party trust because of child support. What are the rules with respect to child support going into Able?
That is a great question as well. I do not think that child support can go into an Able account. I think we've talked about this, Cinda. Did we talk about this?
You and I have. I think the trick with child support going into an Able account is depending on how much it is. And it's also going to count as income. Income is income. And after 18, that child support is unearned income for the child. So not sure what the benefit would be for it to be going into an Able account, other than maybe to have easier access than a special needs trust. The special needs trust protects it from being income. So I don't know why you would want to do that. And again, it would depend on, like, if your child's getting $1,800 a month in child support, it's going to go over the $15,000. Like, it wouldn't even sustain that $15,000. So I'm not sure if that answered the question, but I'm not sure that Able is a good, I mean, then it becomes income to your child. So that's my 2 cents. That's not legal advice either. So that's what I've learned.
And you provided more clarification than I would have been able to provide.
Okay. Teamwork.
Yes.
You know stuff I don't know, right?
No.
Let's see. If the individual dies soon after the Able account is funded and there is no money left after the Medicare, Medicaid takes their payback money. What if the individual dies after the Able account is funded and there is money left over after Medicaid takes their payback? What happens to the money then? Does it go to the family?
It goes through the normal estate planning process. However you have the will set up for that individual, it would go through that estate process, through the probate process.
Do all states have Able accounts and have the same benefits and limits?
Yeah, they do. As far as there are 40 plus states that have Able accounts, they all, that contribution limit is based on that federal law. That contribution limit is actually the gift tax exclusion rate from on the federal level. So that's the way it's written in the law. So that changes a little bit. When Able first opened in 2014, it was $14,000 a year. And so they recently changed it to the $15,000. So very likely they could change it. But as of 2020, it's $15,000 a year. So it's like gift, and it's based on every state. They all have the same contribution limits.
Can a parent pay for medical expenses from parent's account and get reimbursed from Able account later?
No, no. So the way, in order to show that it's a qualified disability expense, it has to have touched the Able account. The money has to have touched the Able account. So money goes in, it's sitting in that Able account. As long as it comes out of that Able account and then you're using it to pay for that disability expense, it wouldn't be considered countable at that point, because it's touched the ABLE account, and but you couldn't do a reimburse option.
It says, but don't forget there are monthly fees. Your $50 can go down to 0, correct?
That is true. That is very true. So as there's a $4 a month fee to have the ABLE account, $48 a year. So yeah, if you put in the $50, very likely, not very likely, depending on how long you have the account, they're going to take that money out if you don't put any additional contributions in. That's very important. And keep in mind, I want to be in the spirit of transparency. These are investment accounts. So this is very, very important to know that they're savings accounts, but they're investment accounts. So depending on which allocation that you choose and in your investment options, there is there's risk involved. And that's very, very important, because whether you choose an aggressive option or a conservative option or that FDIC insured, these accounts have the potential to grow based on the stock market, and they also have the potential to lose money on the stock market. That's something that you would definitely want to take into consideration, because again, you can go on our website and you can look at the performance of each of these funds and see how they're performing. You can make those changes to those investment options up to twice a year. You can go online and make those changes. So it's something, they work very similar to a 401k, and the fact that that's the way the money has the potential to grow over time. So yes, those fees are involved. And so if you don't make those additional contributions, those monthly account fees will come out of that, the money that's already in there.
So I'm going to answer this one for you. It says, I have a limited budget. How can I find a financial planner that can help without costing me a fortune? I just put my email in the chat box. You can reach out to me and I will see if I can find you some resources in your area. Does the monthly fee come out of the ABLE account? So they're automatically withdrawing it every month?
Yes, yes, they will.
This webinar has been incredibly helpful. Thank you. Can my mom have an ABLE account? She is now 77 years old.
Did her disability occur before the age of 26? And does she receive SSI or Medicaid? Or can she get a physician's letter determination? And if so, and she's a Texas resident, then yes, she can be 76 and have an ABLE account, as long as she meets those eligibility requirements.
Okay. If the individual gets SSDI and Social Security for disabled children of retiree benefits instead of SSI, is the maximum amount of money allowed the same or different?
The amount of money for the annual contribution limit?
Let's go with that, yes.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
guessing.
that's gonna stay.
Sandra, I'm not real sure what your question is.
And I'm happy to follow up after, Sandra, if you have it. Yeah, for SS, yeah, it would absolutely be the same. You wouldn't be able to contribute more if you were on SSDI. No, you wouldn't. It's that 15.
This is a follow-up on the 77-year-old mom. Mom receives SSDI.
Okay.
Medicaid has to be a part of it as well, correct? No. So if her mom was a Texas resident and this is the issue. If the disability occurred before the age of 26, that's the issue. If that is in fact, and she receives SSI or you're telling me SSDI, then she would be eligible. She doesn't have to be eligible to receive Medicaid. And generally, if you receive SSI, you're going to receive Medicaid, and then SSDI, you'll receive Medicare, depending on how long after you're in. And I'm not a benefits expert, but it sounds like she would qualify. So if that's something you want additional clarification, we can have a conversation offline. I can help you. Okay. If you have an ABLE account in another state but live in Texas, would the state still take the funds if the person with the disability dies?
Yep. Yes. Yeah, you can have an account in Virginia, and the individual were to pass away, Texas is still gonna come, just as the same they're in Virginia, they would go after a Virginia resident. So yeah, that's the way they're set up.
Okay. Can the debit card option be used for my son's PIN money? Play money? Like, I'm not sure what that is, Karen. I'm not sure what you're asking. Food money, I'm not sure what that one is. So Karen, if you can put in the chat box, clarify that a little bit. Is there any danger of laws changing such that these counts could count as income, thus causing lost benefits? Is there anything in the current law that protects this against this? So like you have $16,000, you've been in there for 2 years, and is it possible that they come in and say,
by the way, we're going to no longer have these ABLE accounts, and oh, by the way, this is all countable income now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, and I'm being just between us, 80 people here. I can't, that doesn't seem like something that would happen. I will tell you that they could come in at any time and decide, hey, we're no longer going to accept enrollment into an ABLE program. I don't see them, and that's just, I'm talking just theoretically based on the way the law is written. They could close the ABLE programs for no new enrollment. I can't see them going backwards and saying now that's going to be countable income. I don't imagine that would happen. I could see closing for the future. Right. Yeah, and this is all federal. This is based on that federal law. So
just to follow up, that can the debit card be used for things such as food, drinks, and just items that her son purchases?
Yep. Yep, that's going to be, and it's going to be super easy to use for that reason, and you'll be able to track all that through that debit card.
We got another. Thanks so much. Who would one name as a successor agent in the event that the ALR, authorized legal representative, would that possibly be the person indicated in the special needs trust listed as the admin?
I can't answer that. I mean, just depending on your situation, whoever you would have set up as a successor, it would just be it would be, something that would be pertaining to your personal situation that I wouldn't know how to answer that one.
That's fair. Karen said, thank you. Child support as income makes sense. I've heard so many different answers on this. I think everybody's still trying to figure it out. That one took me a while. I had to process. I had to process through that one. Our answers to the questions on the website. No, Maria. I'm hoping the recording turns out good, and then we could share that because we are recording the questions as well. My question was about maximum balance. Oh, so the question about SSDI and would the limits change? The question was about maximum balance before SSI benefits stop. So do the same rules apply for SSDI as they do for SSI?
No, they don't. It's only that $100,000 only applies to the SSI monthly benefits, not the SSDI.
Okay. Okay, so this is just to clarify. When my Roth IRA matures the end of this year and I'm 59 and a half, I can't put the whole thing into my son's ABLE account.
You're not able to roll it over into an ABLE account without a tax implication. So you would want, that's not a way you could correct. You would have to either liquidate that or work with your financial planner to figure out how you were going to access those funds in order to contribute them into the ABLE account. But
and
again, there would be those tax implications.
I was going to say, when you would have the tax hits,
yeah,
you would then still have the $15,000 limit on the ABLE account, right? So you're going to take a tax hit, then you can only put $15,000 in there. We're on the same wavelength here, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yes. But that's not.
So you could potentially put some of it in there.
You
But
certainly,
you're going to take a loss because it's not like a 529 college account that you could roll into it without. Are you penalized on a 529 college account if you roll it over to a 529A?
no, you're not. So that's the benefit of having the 529 college savings account. As they're in that same tax code, you can roll them over at no penalty. But in a Roth, you're not able to do that because it's a different retirement vehicle.
Going back to the question of 77-year-old mom, is one of the qualifiers for able account or before 26 and one of the other two qualifiers? This would be helpful for my mother as well as she is losing SSI benefits because my dad is retiring. Nydia, how about you email me your question and I'm going to make sure that we're on the same page of understanding it. Is that fair, Anna? I'll get the question to you.
Absolutely.
I want to make sure that you get a good answer. This is an investment account, so how do you decide which option to pick?
That's a great question as well. The great thing about it is you get to decide. It's not even, it's based on your personal situation. How are you planning on using your ABLE account? How much money do you want to put in? We're seeing about half of the people that have Texas ABLE accounts are putting money in. They are choosing the aggressive option and they're looking the other way. They're not touching their ABLE accounts. The other half are putting money in the FDIC insured option and they're taking it and using it transactionally quite often. So there's different, I mean, I can't, number one, that's financial advice giving you, so I can't answer that in that way. Every situation is going to be different just depending on how you're going to use it. And that's the beauty of it, right? But I would say definitely read our information on the website. Read the information on the performance, on the investment options, on the performance of those options. And then that way you'll be able to be more informed on making that decision when you go through that enrollment option and the enrollment process. And then keep in mind, you can also change them up to twice a year, and that's by law. On that federal law, you can change them. You just go back into that online system and make that modification up to twice a year.
Great. So I could open an ABLE account for my son who receives SSDI and use it to help him get an apartment?
Absolutely. If he meets the eligibility requirements, Texas resident, occurred before the age of 26, he's receiving SSDI, certainly he could have an ABLE account. He would be the owner of the account, and you could use that to pay for funds for his living expenses. That would be a disability expense.
Okay. Karen made a statement that you wouldn't want to put your retirement money in an ABLE account because if your child dies, it would go to Medicaid if your child was utilizing Medicaid. Just a comment. Can an inheritance go into an ABLE account even if it's over $15,000 a year?
Nope, it will count as countable income. It could go into a special needs trust, and then your special needs trust could fund $15,000 a year, or if there's gift tax exclusion rate. So they can be used hand in hand. That's, that's the beauty of both of those tools being used together. One's got a little bit more hands-on approach, and the other one is going to be able to house a lot more money in it, but you can't use it quite. The control over a trust is a little bit more difficult.
Okay. If a parent dies and leaves money, can you put money in the ABLE account?
As long as it doesn't exceed to the $15,000 a year, yes.
Okay. Whoa. You gave a lot of information. We had a lot of really great questions.
I did. I've been on all of your sessions, and I think that's the most questions.
It was.
So I don't know if that means I can do a good job explaining, or it's a lot of information to know.
We definitely,